Welcome. Hi, Croft. So nice to see
Hello,
you.
Tini.
So nice to see you. And the good news is we're here, obviously, to have a great conversation, but we're also here because you have launched something really special. Okay. But before yeah, really, I'm very excited about it. But before we tell the audience what it is, for those of you who don't know, Croft Edwards is my guest today, and he is a Newfield coach at the Coach Partnership. And this is the big reveal, the author of the newly released Liquid Accordion. So I have a copy of the book here.
There we go.
If you guys haven't bought it, you need to go and buy it. Where can they get it, Croft?
Amazon, and it's Amazon International, so they can get it kind of all over the world.
That's really super.
Pretty cool.
Yeah. So today's conversation is going to be very much organized around this particular book. And so this book is really zooming in on somatics. All right. So before we go any further, Croft, why somatics, and what appealed to you to write something around somatics?
So you have to go back, or I have to go back about 20 years to why somatics. Because my background was the military, and I was trained in my body, in a sense, to numb my body, to be able to focus, to be able to whatever is going on, to get results, all of those things. Well, fast forward, I become a coach. I go down the path of ontological coaching, find Newfield, the Newfield network, walk in day one, walk in the room, and I literally felt like there was fairies and leprechauns and everybody's dancing. And my body actually did what it had trained to do, which was armor up and get ready for combat. And I walk in this room and I'm literally, what is going on? And I couldn't fathom it, because how could this be leadership? How could this be coaching? And so because of that, fast forward to day two, I showed up on day two, and it was interesting because there were people that were there at day one that kind of had that same look that I had, and they weren't there. They were like, heck with this. And I'm sitting there in the audience, and Julio Alaya, who's the founder of Newfield, is talking, and I realized my body was numb. And it was numb not like it couldn't feel, it was numb like it was starting to feel. And I said to myself, I don't know what this is, but I kind of need to be there. So I started off blind to my body, but slowly my body said, there's something here. And as I started down this path, every time I would go a little bit deeper, my body was in many respects leading the way, but it was also where I was getting a ton of knowledge and wisdom starting to come alive.
Oh my gosh.
And so for 20 years, I've been on this path, and it just is such an amazing path, because as I've accessed and connected with my body, I've had the ability now to expand my capacity, expand my ability to love, expand my ability to have conversations, all those things. But doing it in a domain which years prior I would have said, that has nothing to do with anything. And so for me, it was just a very profound place to be, which then led me down this path. And then to fast forward,
Can I just pause you?
Yeah.
Let's just pause for a minute, because you're going to go into how the book came. But there was something that you said around right at the beginning of the importance of the body to you. So for the audience to know, somatics is really the study of the body, right?
Yes.
And you said your body was used to being the body of combat, versus what I'm hearing is the body of fluidity or movement, right?
Yes.
So what's the difference? If you were to kind of slow down that tape for people listening, what is the body of combat? What does that feel like versus having the body of dance or fluidity?
Well, for me, being a soldier, it allowed my body to numb up so that I could accomplish whatever I needed to accomplish. So, for instance, pain was not an option. You just keep going, you work through it, you suck it up, right? And then as I start to access this, I didn't realize that also meant when I numbed it up, when I'm armored up, I also couldn't feel other things. I couldn't feel joy. I didn't know how to feel love as much. And so to feel love the body felt as if it was betraying me. So armor up again. And then as I've gone down this path, you start to see, or I've started to see how powerful the body is. And again, as I open up the body, I access things that I couldn't access before. If we can't do it in our body, we can't do it.
Right. And that's actually really interesting because you compare it to your background of military. It's going to be true for someone, for example, who grew up in a very unsafe environment and therefore had to armor up to feel protected, to feel safe.
Yes.
So it's it's how we build the body for safety and survival, I suppose.
Well, we make the assessment we have a shape. We literally have a somatic shape. But I also talk about we have an unshape. So just as I had an armored body that allowed me to move through things, what if I couldn't access that? What if I was somebody that my body was always open and loving? But now I'm in a situation which requires my body to be able to go through things. I'm not likely going to be able to do it, or that person would not be able to do it either. So it's not that armoring was bad or loving is good. It's simply that the shape we're in, our somatic way of being, then determines what's possible in the world or how I navigate the world.
And perhaps even how I see the world, right?
Yes, we see the world not as it is. We see the world as we are.
Yeah.
Right. So go back to that initial time. I literally, my body saw it as if I was in an environment I'd never been into. So I know how to deal with that, and that is to armor up and get ready to take something out.
Right.
Right.
Wow, fascinating.
Versus somebody who their body is always open to something. They may be in an environment where, oh, I'm just going to be open to loving, and yet that environment may very quickly run them over.
Yeah.
So that path, as we expanded, learning that, oh, there is not a right shape. It's simply that the shape I'm in that moment determines what's possible in that moment.
And that's the power of being human, right? Is our capacity to calibrate, is our capacity to notice what is and then calibrate it to work with what's around me and the outcomes that I want to create in the world. Nice. So now let's come back to the book. So you had this experience, and so therefore, why this book?
So I had this experience, but I went through, and when I went through this process, there was just this story, we coach in the body. But I had a question of why, because I didn't have a context yet. And I didn't know why or what or anything. We just do it. And the people that I saw were very masterful at it. They almost seemed like Jedi warriors. They could do some pretzel thing and the other person, oh, it was profound. But I couldn't see any of that. And so I would look around and I would say, well, where do we start, right? Where is the book on somatics for dummies? And there wasn't one. So that, and then as a mentor coach, the students that I was mentor coaching, in the domain of ontological coaching, we look at language, which could be laid out in what we call speech acts, and here's how we have conversations. Moods and emotions were there, but they were a little more ethereal. But the body, there wasn't a place to go to. And so I just started about 5 or 6 years ago down a path of going, okay, well, why do we coach in the body? And if we can answer that, what and where do we coach in the body? And then the third part of the book looks at actually, okay, so how do you actually coach in, with, or through the body? And so that was just the path.
Yeah. And I also love the title, The Liquid Accordion. Why that title?
So that came through the research. And so there's an amazing, well, I find him amazing. Others may not. There's a author and researcher named Stanley Kellerman, Dr. Stanley Kellerman, who did a lot of work on the anatomy of emotions. And he did a very deep dive into it. And in that research, I started to realize this idea that we are this liquid accordion. We're fundamentally expanding or contracting to navigate the world. Right. And in the book, we go deeper into it, but this idea of what does a cell do? A cell expands or contracts to its environment. Cells form layers, expand, contract. Layers form tubes, expand, contract. So at any given moment, you or I is this liquid accordion that our body is expanding and contracting to navigate the world. And at the same time, as we do that, that is unlocking the sensors and all of the ways we navigate the world because, right, the brain is part of a limbic system. All of the sensors for the brain are the body, expanding, contracting, right? Back to that when I was armored up, a lot of my focus was in my eyes scanning the horizon. Okay, great. But what was I missing? Because I was so focused on something, right? So we are this liquid accordion at any time, neither right nor wrong, but then that's how we see the world.
Yeah. So I love that approach, right? The other thing that occurs to me is when I think accordion, I think music. And so the human being, as you say, expand, contract, as we expand and contract our bodies, it's the music that we produce. It's the music that we make ourselves available to also starts to shift, right? And a contracted body attracts different kind of music. Expanded bodies attracts different kind of music, right? And I think this is beautiful.
You could just think of sports, which most people can relate to, or in a movie in that action scene, where's the tempo of the music? It's fast, it's explosive, all those things. What are people's bodies doing, right?
Yeah.
Or when we have tender, loving, slow music, right? So yeah, it's very much that idea. And then that's how, again, the shape that I'm in then determines how I see the world, not necessarily how the world is. That's just how I'm seeing the world.
Yeah. A lot of our audience are comprised of, some are coaches who would practice this with themselves and with their clients. Some are in the corporate context. I'm curious because I know you do a lot of work with leaders in organizations. How do you see the body being really important in the context of leadership?
I see it as very important. Many times I assess leaders don't see it. They just don't see it, right? Because again, we think of ourselves, we almost are brains on a stick, or at least that's how we think we are. Our brain, we think, therefore we are. And so most leaders, I would say, not most, but many, many leaders are blind to the body. Therefore, they're blind to emotional spaces because I don't see it, I don't feel it because I'm so focused on taking action. Usually, most leaders live in a world of action. So many times they don't see it. And so a lot of what we work on in coaching is not so much here's the answer, but the easiest place is what if you just started listening? What if you could listen to your body, listen to your gut, listen to your heart, feel, right? What are you seeing in this scenario or in this emotional space, right? A practice I do with people, very simple example, is if I'm in, say, a mood of resignation, my head is down, and I ask people, what do you see? And many times they'll say, I see my feet. And then I'll say, now I want you to pull your shoulders back, lift your head up. What do you see? And they'll say, oh, I see my room. I see this. I see that. And I make the point that all of that was still there when I was looking at my feet. I could only see my feet because in that moment, that was my observer.
Mm.
So if my body has shut off to love, I can't access that. So even though there's love there, it may be all around, I can't see it.
Mm.
Right. And so we can only see what, in a sense, we're listening to. We use the word listening very broadly, but with my whole body, my whole being, what am I listening to? Many times, if not all times, is then determined by the shape of my body.
Let's just bring it back to leadership. For me, it's really fascinating. And I'm just wondering if I'm listening to this podcast now, what sort of practice or what sort of, I'm a leader listening to this and I want to become better at my leading. What could I start to pay attention to in my body that would be helpful?
Yeah. Well, I in the book I talk about what are called pivot points,
Mm.
and pivot points are not necessarily they're the answer, but there's 4 pivot points that have, if the idea of a pivot, they have an undue influence on the body. And in no particular order, one is the eyes, right? If I notice when I'm really focused, my eyes are very focused, right? And now if I'm really focused on something, my body is actually directed towards that. If I'm more relaxed, my eyes are relaxed. Now I can see a bigger picture. Another example of a pivot point is the jaw, right? If I clench my jaw, it engages all of the upper body muscles to clench my jaw, right? So if we think of about a fighter in a fight, they're clenching their jaw. When we're angry, we're clenching our jaw. Conversely, relax your jaw, right? So I'll have people practice, just relax your jaw, and you can do this right now. Just relax your jaw and try to get angry without moving your jaw.
Very interesting.
Another example is hands. Hands are the other one, right? If you think about the hands have more nerves than anywhere in the body. Almost every action we take involves our hands. So if you were going to stand up, likely the first thing you would do is your hand would grab the armrest. You're going to send an email. You're going to type. You're driving a car, right? And so the hands are very much, and if you think about this, if I very much engage my hand, make a fist, I'm bringing all of my core into it. Again, conversely, if I relax my hands. So one of my favorite things to do when I have like the quintessential type A leader in meetings, their practice will be to take their hands, open their palms, and open their palms towards the audience, sit back in their chair, and I'll tell them the only thing you can't do in this meeting is move your hands. And what happens is they literally just kind of shut down because the hands are relaxed, they're open. I can't take action. And then the 4th pivot point is the feet, which if we're sitting down, maybe aren't as engaged, but obviously as human beings, as we navigate the earth, our feet determine how we connect with the earth. Well, if you think of somebody who's in a hurry, what part of the feet are they like now? They're on their toes. Somebody who's laid back is on their heels. If I'm more centered, I bring my heels and the ball of my feet into place. So I'm more centered. So when we do some centering practice, what I have them do is connect the heel and the ball of their feet to the ground with their toes slightly touching, which takes our body more vertical, which now we're present, right? But when I'm on my toes, I'm leaning forward. I'm going somewhere. I'm actually in the future. Right?
This is
so all of those are just
good.
Just places that I can access to. This is how I see the world, right? So, and we know this, but we don't really think about it, right? So if you think about somebody that's really busy, how's their body going to be? Well, it's going to be leaning forward. Their hands are going to be moving a lot. They're probably going to have tension in their jaw. Their eyes are going to be focused. Oh, conversely, what if somebody's really laid back? Jaw is relaxed. Eyes are relaxed. Their hands aren't moving. Their feet aren't moving. And so if I then can access it, now I can access a different way of seeing the world.
Yeah. I'm listening to you and I was following the different pivot points, right? To me, it's a different language to speak about a contracted jaw and an expanded jaw. So it all comes back to contract, expand, right?
Yeah.
The other thing that's fascinating is as a leader, for example, I show up in a certain way. Not only do I have a certain experience and the way I show up, let's just say clenched jaws and squinted eyes, very focused eyes. It's not just that it impacts me and what I see, it also impacts my team, right? It
Absolutely.
also impacts the people around me. And the practice possibly is to not course correct, but rather create range so that you can be very focused when you need to, and you can expand, soften the jaw, soften the eyes. Go ahead. What were you going to say?
Yeah. Well, and so, yes, absolutely. The more range I have, now I can access more moods and emotions, more bodies, all those things. Where for me, a huge awakening came for me somatically. And how I kind of came across the jaw as a pivot point was I have Labrador retrievers. And I'd plant a tree outside, and the labs would think, oh, this is a really good toy. I'll go dig it up and pull it out. And so I'd walk outside, and here's a dog holding a $80 tree that I just bought, thinking it's a toy. And what I would do was inevitably I would clench my teeth, and I would say things we can't say on the podcast, right? And what I realized, though, but here two things I think are really interesting. One was I didn't realize that wasn't the way I was. I was actually taught that because my father did the exact same thing. You could place my brother and I behind a tree or behind a fence and have us talk about something like that. We sound identical to my dad. But what was amazing was I started to realize that, and I went, wow, in that moment when I am really angry, I could actually trace all of my energy to my right bottom canine tooth. And the harder I was clenching here, the more angry I was. But here was it was really cool. If I just relaxed my jaw, I couldn't be angry. And it was just amazing. I was like, oh my God, right? Now, I still can get that angry, but it doesn't happen as much, if at all, because just through practice, I've now accessed, oh, okay. So the dog tore the tree out. Yeah. Is it the end of the world? No. But it became, because in the past, my body would take action before I even thought. And now I'm clenched down, I'm biting my tooth, there's anger. And now it doesn't happen as much because I just relax my jaw.
And it's also not by default. It's not an automatic reaction, because what you did was what I call slowed the tape down, and you started to deconstruct it and go, okay, whenever I bit here, this is the experience I create. Let's try something different. And so that's an interesting. So here's the question I wanted to ask you is, what's the practice? So for those who are listening, by the end, I guess I have two questions here. By the end of them reading your book, what is it that you hope readers leave with, or what do you hope lands for them? That's number one. And number two, what are some practices that you think would be good for our listeners and those who read the book that they can practice for themselves to become just more attuned to their body?
So for many, it's just simply the awareness that we do have a body, right? In our current world, we do have bodies, but they're a way to get from point A to point B. Right? It's not a well-known thing. So if it is the awareness that I have a body now, and I make the statement, the body is the holy grail, because if I can shift my body, now I can shift to whatever situation. So the awareness, and then it is through practice that I start to access other bodies. I access different ways of being, which now I can open up a different world through practice. So the book is designed to be a primer. It's a place to start. But throughout the book, I really say it's not something you may master today, right? You and I are watching this right now, and the Winter Olympics are going on. People literally practice years to be able to do whatever it is, the ski jump or the ice skating. Well, why would leadership be any different? It's a practice. Our emotional range is a practice. So it's that you have a body, and now you get to practice, right? So how do you get to Carnegie Hall? A classic joke in the United States, you practice, practice, practice. So I want them to walk away with, oh yeah. But here's what I find with being a beginner and practicing, it allows the space to be human.
Say that again slowly.
By being a beginner and practicing, it allows the space to be human, because I don't have to be a machine. I don't have to be perfect. And I can laugh at myself, oh yeah, I didn't do that well, but it was a practice. And so just creating the space. So to your point earlier, I don't get as angry anymore. And it's because I've learned how to access a broader range of how to deal with something. And now I'm just like, oh, yeah.
Yeah.
When I'm putting the tree in, the dogs may dig this up. And if they do, well, right. Or I can take action and make sure they don't dig it up. But that's a whole nother story.
The statement you made earlier is really lingering for me. Practice allows the space for us to be human. Yeah. You know what's resonating for me, why it's lingering, is when we practice, there's going to be moments where we fail. When we practice, we slow things down. And when we practice, we remember. Mm-hmm. Like when I was a kid, actually, I remember doing this, for example. And I actually really love that because practice, certainly in somatics, for example, it's also a memory jog, a memory boost of what it was like to play, for example. And one of my passions in coaching is coaching people in organizations and leaders who wake up in the morning and go, how do I do my best job today? And they do what they always do. And so people like you and I come in and go, well, is there a different angle that you haven't considered? And words like play, what's the body of play? How do you combine play and ambition together? And that's not just in the domain of doing, it's also in the domain of what's the shape that I bring to the office? What's the movement that I bring? I think that's really, really juicy. I love that. Wow. We're going to start to bring our conversation to a close. And before we do that, I wanted to hand it over to you, Croft, to what do you want to leave the listeners with? But before I do that, I read this book and I absolutely love it. I love it because you've broken down so many different elements, like the 4 pivot points, like case studies, and how can we really work? It's like an encyclopedia. I really love it. So if you guys listening are interested, really, I would highly recommend that you get a copy. But as we bring our conversation to a close, what do you want to leave the listeners with?
I think it just goes back to being a beginner and practicing, right? So whether I am a coach, whether I'm an elite athlete, whatever it is, even if I'm not an elite athlete, it's the power of practice and being a beginner. Again, Julio Walaya, one of my teachers, somebody asked him one time, they said to him, I'd love to do what you do. And he said, it's actually quite simple. You simply have the same conversation every day for 30 years. And what he was talking about at the time, the context was ontological coaching. And I have been ontological coaching now for 20 years. And so I've been in this conversation for 20 years. And I just am blown away by it. And I'm curious what it'll be like in 10 years when I can see things that I can't see now. And the only way I've done that is by being a beginner, right? And I go back all the way back to that first moment when I started in this path. I luckily stumbled into this. And the only reason I actually stayed in the program was the Army was paying for it. So I didn't have to back out. But I was like, how hard could it be? I spent a year deployed overseas. I can do this. But it was that luck that I stumbled into it, that I opened up something that I've been studying for 20 years. And so whether you're a beginner or a master, I try to write the book from the standpoint of it's going to apply to both of you. It's a place to start. And in the back of the book, I've got lots of resources of here's places to go further. Right? If you find a martial art interesting, if you find martial arts interesting, you want to learn the body, go study martial arts. And here's the irony. They'll say, okay, you're going to go do this for the next 30 years. Right? You're going to practice it. Right? And what do you do in martial arts? You go and you practice. And the black belts are practicing with the white belts, because even if I'm a black belt, I'm learning by teaching the white belts. So wherever you are on the journey, just go be a beginner, just go have fun and see where it takes you.
I love it. I love it. It reminds me of wax on, wax off.
Yeah.
In Karate Kid, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just repeat until it's your new normal.
Yeah.
And then repeat again.
Yeah, and then you go do it again. Yes.
I love it. So thank you so much, Croft, for coming on. I wish you all of the success. And I personally, I love this book. I think it's really helpful. And I think it really brings us all to a domain that is often left taken for granted. Like you say, brain on a stick. But there's so much richness and so much depth that can actually propel us forward in a very powerful way. So I just want to recap for our listeners and viewers. A great practice is exactly that, which is to pause and think about what are some areas that are unfamiliar to me, but would be a great place for me to pay attention to and practice, and be curious about what surfaces as a result of the practice. So it could be, I mean, if you read the book, there'll be much more that you can pull on, but based on today, what Croft was mentioning, pivot points to notice where you hold your tension. Is it your jaw? And if you do, try something different. Is it your eyes? Do you notice that you're squinting and zooming in intensely all the time? What would happen on the extreme opposite? Hands, feet. Yeah. And so have fun with the practice, everyone, and we will see you at another podcast. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Tini.